With period movies, there's so many experts that are really eager to tell you how wrong you are. So you just got to get it right down to the littlest detail. Because someone will say, well, that lighter wasn't invented in that year. It came 6 months afterwards. And those are the people you're actually trying to please, because they'll start the landslide.
Hi, and welcome back to StudioBinder Academy. I'm Brandon. Today we're speaking with production designer Andrew Menzies, whose recent work includes the video game adaptation Borderlands. Andrew, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for interviewing me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to start off, we like to start with everyone's background. Could you tell us where you began? You know, what kind of inspired you to be a filmmaker in the first place?
It's a long story, but in a nutshell, it found me. Where I grew up in England and Scotland and somewhat in the outback of Australia, film was not a big part of my life, but design was. And I had applied to the Royal, I'm missing a lot of the story, but I applied to the Royal College of Art in London. I was working in the outback on a cattle ranch when I got the call that I'd got in, and I had to be there in 2 weeks. And I stopped the job, hitchhiked to Perth, in West Australia, caught a plane, turned up the day before, went in and started at the Royal College of Art. And I never lived. And there was the film design course, which I had got in because I actually wanted to do car design. And the guy said, well, you can't get in on car design with your resume, but you can with film, because I had a landscape architectural background already. So I knew how to draft and everything. So they said, but if you start film design, you can cross over. But when I started the film design, I enjoyed it so much. And the 2 years just flew by, and it just completely captured me. But I had a little seed sown when I was a kid. I was about 8, 9 years old, and I actually met John Wayne in London. And back then, my twin brother and I were just obsessed with John Wayne. We wore little cowboy outfits. We were watching all his movies, and I was, just lost for words. My brother's a great talker, so he dominated. But John Wayne took us around the sets, and I just remember being so surprised by seeing wooden sets on the outside, and then you walk in and it's this bathroom or this living room, and it was very magical, not only having your childhood hero show you around, but to see the sets. And I just remember he spent literally an hour to 2 hours with us, showing us around and talking us how it was all done. And it just stuck in my mind ever since. So I would say that's where the seed was sown, but I never have ever thought I would have ended up in film. And I always say it found me. So.
Wow. I mean, not only just the literal journey of hitchhiking through Australia to get to college, but then to have, one of the biggest movie stars of the time in John Wayne kind of show you your first look behind the scenes, the magic behind movie making. I can understand why that stuck with you.
Yeah, and the irony, because my mother took us to see the movie when it came out, and then just seeing how they stitched it all together, because it was shot in our block of flats in London, and they play it like it's right off Trafalgar Square, and you walk out, and then I was like, that's not where we live. So as a kid, it was really mind blowing. Like, wait a minute, because there's a bomb that goes off the apartment, there's a hole blown in the wall. And there's I think it was Trafalgar Square out the back of the building. I was like, wow. So it's very, it was a very cool experience. And then how I got on my first movie, sorry to bore you with it, but it was also just as serendipitous. I was invited to see friends in Wilmington, North Carolina, when I left college. And I bumped into Englishmen out, and I knew they were making a lot of movies in Wilmington, so I knew the chance of meeting a filmmaker was high. But anyway, so I started talking to this gentleman, Gavin Bouquet, who's a great production designer. And I didn't know that at the time, but we chatted. He went, oh my God, I went to the same college as you 20 years ago. And we just started chatting. Said, look, I think I might be able to give you a job. Why don't you come meet the art director? We're going to be having dinner at the end of the week. Come to the dinner. And so I show up, and we're sitting around a table of 8 people. There's George Lucas, the famous actors of the movie. And I remember and I know he was playing a little bit of a prank, but I was just like, oh my God, I'm just out of film school and I'm at a table with George Lucas. But it was really, it was very, very, I mean, I'm cutting out all the hard bits where I searched for a job for like half a year and all that, but it was a very exciting and very lucky start to the getting into the film. And as you probably know, like once you get your foot in, the hard bit is getting your foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, as long as you don't drop the ball, you can do well in this business. Like it's hungry for people that are hungry. So.
I mean, wow, what another incredible story. To be sitting at a table with George Lucas. Wow. Okay, so you got to the Royal College Art of Design and you fell in love with film production design. Was there anything specific within that kind of drew you in?
We're just, we had great lecturers. We're in the center of London, so you had like Ridley Scott, Terry Gilliam, people like that coming and speaking. I mean, they didn't speak, though oddly enough, those directors are quite art-based because they used to be art directors themselves. So it was a real insight into the making of bigger films. And the irony is, like, the structure to make a small student movie is the same as the structure for a big movie, just much bigger, obviously. So many, many more people, but you still need the camera, you still need the grips, you still need lectures, you still need art department. So that to me was really interesting to do our student movies. We had great mentors from the industry, Oscar-winning mentors, once again, because we were in the center of London and we had that pool to pull from. It wasn't hard for them to come and help us. And a lot of, they weren't paid or anything. They were very charitable and helpful. And it really, and you've given lots of art projects. And so I've always been immersed in art since I was a little kid. So to me, it was very exciting and, a lot of fun, really, and hard work because you're dumpster diving and you're stealing shots at your mum's house or your granny's house, or, but that's all a part of filmmaking. You've got to be driven by the joy of it because there's not much else you'll get. Like you get up early and you stay late, and it's I always equate it to the being like in the circus. You're with a group of your circus teammates and you're making this thing, and it's all consuming, but if you love it, it's all you want to do.
Right. Yeah, it's hard work, but I mean, you do have to love what you're doing, to keep seeing it through.
Yeah.
So, speaking of your studies at the Royal College of Art, there's an ever-growing debate with younger people that, do they even need to go to film school? What's your opinion on that?
That's a really, really good question. It depends what you want to get into. Like if you want to do big movies, and obviously everyone hears the luck story of the person that did a commercial and they're just wedding down streets, but then their commercial director suddenly gets a movie and they're suddenly designing a movie. And that does happen, but it's a very rare, it's a more lucky opportunity than actually working your way up. So I think the only way to get into bigger, the way to get into bigger movies is to build your foundation and the toolkit to get started in the business. And that's in the art department. That's typically, you could maybe graphic design, but typically as an architect or an architectural base, like drafting, drawing, where you're at the semi bottom of the pyramid. You could even be a PA. We have on the show I'm on now, there's our ex-architect who's our PA. So, but he won't be a PA for long because he's already starting to draw. And, I think that's how you, once you get, like I said, once you get your foot in the door, if you've got the tools to carry on, then you'll blossom. Like you've got to, obviously got to have an artistic eye, but your drawing, you got to start. The sure way is to start at the bottom and always deliver, like keep on. Like, I wasn't very good when I got started because I didn't have a grasp of big sets. Like I was thrown in the deep end in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was doing like $500,000 sets, $1 million sets sometimes. And I, just thrown in the deep end. So in England, you have to do an apprenticeship system where it takes 5 years before you get to do even a set. So I didn't have that. And I remember messing up a lot with these masses of, there'll be hundreds and hundreds of dimensions on a sheet of, plan. So you might get one or two wrong, and you get the construction guys give you a really hard time. So you learn trial and of fire, but then I would come in at 5 a.m. and on my weekends and double check my drawings, and then I just put in that time to build my skills as quick as I could. But I loved it. I had no problem coming in on the weekends and drawing and learning and just trying to get up to speed with that's the thing. Like I remember an old timer telling me when I first got in the business, they said, look, the worst you can do is be the first in and the last to leave. And I remember like on a show, I think it was at first X-Men, there was a bunch of set designers. I was the junior, and I remember hearing them discuss who they were going to keep on to bring up to Canada. They were only going to keep one person. And I remember someone saying, Andrew, bring him. He's always first in and last to leave. And I said, yes, it paid off. It definitely wasn't the best, but you just never know what pays off. So you just got to put every foot forward to hope you're the one that gets chosen to carry on and keep going. But anyway, so my advice is, yes, definitely build a foundation. It's the sure. We'll all lob on to the lucky stories of people that rocket to the top doing a commercial or something, but the sure way is to get a foundation and study in your art, and then build from that for sure. Like architectural school, art school, any of those will give you a good foundation to get started.
Moving on, I'd like to talk about the art department itself. So you've had many roles within the art department. Would you mind, for those who may not know, explaining the differences between, say, an art director versus a set designer versus a production designer, and kind of how those roles relate to one another?
Right. Well, it's like any business setup. It's a pyramid. At the bottom, obviously there's PAs, but then you'll get the set designers and art coordinators and things. But so in my world, it was starting as a set designer and drawing up sets. And I did that for many years, just set. And you learn a lot about your next role, which will be assistant art directing, which is managing that set. And so you'll draw them up, and then the opportunity comes where the art director says, go out to the set and make sure that gets built how you drew it, and you've heard all the conversations. And each step is hard because you're not used to that. So you go into, let's say, from set designing, where it's all drafting on the table or on your computer now. But back in my day, it was hand drawing on the drafting on the desk, and then just going out and dealing with construction guys is a real trial by fire, because one, they want to prove that you're wrong all the time because you're the office boy. So it's very so you're getting bullied, and you've got to hold your ground and say, no, this is how it's done. We wanted it this way, and you just keep, so you learn how to deal with that construction side of it, and building and getting it painted and finished right, and then sometimes, like I was very lucky to have Rick Carter as my mentor, a great designer. He really made sure and mentored you through that process, and being on the set through shooting as well. So you would sit through the shooting process as an assistant art director, which is an incredible experience. You're working with these great directors and seeing how they make movies, and the lighting and the camera angles and moves. And that's all a part of set designing too, because when you're drawing a set, you have to be very cognizant of where's the camera going, where's the lighting coming from, how's the action facilitated in that set? Is something going to be in the way? Do they have enough room for that action? So it's all these layers of information that you learn, and it took me that long. Like, I'm always amazed when people jump that step, because I learned so much about the movie making process, and hats off to people that can do that, jump that step. But I know I couldn't have, and I needed to learn, have that maturity dealing with all those people and having meetings with Spielberg and Bob Zemeckis and people like that, and having the confidence to work on the set and deliver these sets for the designer. So basically you move, so that's assistant art directing. Then you move into art directing, where you'll be managing. You're not drawing anymore. Typically, you're starting to oversee all the assistant art directors and set designers. So you will have multiple sets you're looking after, and you'll be working under a supervising art director who will be much more involved with the management, labor management, and the budget. So he's making sure where the art directors also are keeping an eye on that on their individual level, but it's all reporting into the supervising art director, who then reports to the designer. And then the designer will also obviously be checking with all the art directors himself, but the supervising art director supervises the budget and the management, like, okay, make sure these guys are here on that time, and that set needs to be dressed by this time, and chasing. It's just, you can see the list behind me is exactly what that is. It's just making sure all those sets. A typical movie might have between 50 to 60 sets. Some have 70, some have much less. That's pretty typical. So you have to manage those in a very, you got to think it's only shot over a few weeks. Most movies might be 65 days of shoot, and you're dealing with weather and actor availabilities and all these things. So it needs to be choreographed almost to the level of a military operation. So, and you get it wrong. If you get it wrong, like something's not at set when it should be, that could cost tens of thousands of lost shooting time. So there's a lot of pressure. And then you're talking about all the weather issues that could happen, or that something doesn't get delivered in time. And, there's all these things that, you got to be managing. And I think a good art director becomes very risk sensitive, in terms of that they're always anticipating disaster. So like my wife's always like, oh, butterflies and everything's happy and joyful. And I'm like, well, you've got to be prepared for the weather, and something might go like this, and we might get a puncture on the way, so we should allow the time. And she's like, why did you ruin it? And I'm like, yeah, why do I do that? And I realize that's because I've had a career of anticipating disasters and hopefully negating them before they happen. And I think that's a good art director is always ready. They're obviously positive people, but they're ready for disaster and got a plan if it happens. Because it's a cliche, but it's true. Like, if it's going to go wrong, it probably will. And if you have Rick Carter gave me one of his many pearls of wisdom was, if you have a feeling it's wrong, it probably is. And it's very, very true. Like, if you have a little sense of something, that could go wrong, that it feels like that guy might not deliver because he said, yeah, we'll be there, don't worry. You then follow up, be a nag, don't worry. Don't worry about nagging, because you got him. You'll be the guy making sure it gets to set. So anyway, that's my advice.
Wow. Yeah, there's so many logistics and variables that go into it. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is how logistical the whole process is on top of the creative, the creative aspect of it. Like you said, it's, I mean, that chart behind you kind of says it all. There's so
Yeah.
many things that have to go right. It's a military operation that has to run smoothly. One mistake costs, like you said, a lot of money and time.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that one mistake, it can kind of cause a domino effect, and it all falls apart from there. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So now, as a production designer, what's your ideal process when starting a film? Are you creating mood boards? Do you break down the script? Are you meeting with the director? Like, what's your ideal process when starting a film?
Well, I definitely, when I read a script for the first time, I actually don't read it to do a breakdown. I do, I know some people do, probably more left brain designers, but I'm very right brain. I just see it as visual pictures. I'm just seeing it as that. And then I'm like, okay, now um, I'm gonna start. So I'll dig into images right away, like and I'll look at. Doesn't matter if it's a period movie or a sci-fi. I'll look at thousands of pictures and just looking for the ones that I respond to, like it just feel like feeling. I don't look for literal pictures typically. Period movies that I do because it's about, oh yeah, look, that's what they did back then. But definitely a science fiction movie like Power Rangers or something like that, like I'll go in and go, okay, I know with Power Rangers I have to create, and they've got these Zords and creatures and things like that are very much what they're in their world, and people know what they are in the TV shows and everything. But I come at it much more like, okay, how can I reinvent that thing, whatever it is, let's say a Zord on Power Rangers, and update it, make it cool, not offend the fans, excite the fans. It's got to be alien, but not alienating, because it's for kids, and not, so that I'll start with that and just start digging deep into like research. And like for Power Rangers, the inspiration actually came from a future concept for a Mercedes. I was like, okay, that I can see, and that's the exoskeleton, and then they've got and it just but that took me several weeks of thousands of pictures of research. But then you take something like Borderlands, which has a very, very, very clear design aesthetic in the game, and it was made clear to me that that's what needed to be honored. So right away it became more about, okay, how do we keep that playful colorfulness and in these real world sets. Luckily the game surfs that line already, where they have you feel like you could be in Arizona or wherever, but it's a lot of human scale detritus. It's not alien detritus. So I got a head start on that one because the aesthetic's already very clear in the game, and Eli, the director, was like, I want it to look like the game. So that was an easy one. But any period movie I've done, it comes from thousands of pictures of research. Yeah, like just looking for the inspiration. Like on Fury, for instance, I remembered I went through so many pictures of war, and I mean, one, it's quite depressing because it's all blood and guts. Then so I actually noticed after the fact that took quite a toll on me emotionally, because I literally was looking at the worst of the worst. And I remember we went to the museum, the War Museum in England, and they said, we've got these secret pictures. They're private. They were given to us. Yeah, I was like, oh, finally I found new, because I started seeing the same pictures over and over again. And then they showed pictures. I was like, I've seen these too. So I realized I dug so deep in all the research that I was now recycling what was considered very, special imagery. So I was like, wow, I've literally seen everything. But a lot of one picture triggered the inspiration for the look of the movie, which was this guys buried in up to their waists in mud trying to push a jeep out of the mud, and it had a caption saying the wettest year in 50 years, and that was this time of our movie. And I was like, oh, we got to do deep mud everywhere on every set, and that became the overriding look of the movie, much to the crew weren't too happy about it, but it was the look that I think separated it. But that's why I'll keep looking and looking and looking till inspiration, sort of something triggers this is what this is, so, and then just all the detail, because there's so many with period movies, there's so many experts that are really eager to tell you how wrong you are. So you just got to get it right down to the littlest detail, because someone will say, well, that lighter wasn't invented in that year. It came 6 months afterwards. And, those are the people you're actually trying to please, because they'll start the landslide because they're literally as armies of people trying to pick holes in period movies. I mean, I even had complaints on 310 to Yuma that I was a Scottish man making an American movie, and that, I mean, they'll find anything. So you just got to get that. You got to get it right, right down to the absolute smallest. So even vehicles in Fury, I was making sure that they were, and the director wanted this too, that it was exactly correct for that time of year in this place. So we were double checking, make sure everything was correct. So anyway, that's
no, that's incredible. Yeah, I think there's a level of authenticity that, like you said, if the audience, even if they're not, World War II tank experts, they want to see it, and they want to feel, they want to be transported. And I think the only way to do that is through authenticity.
Yeah, but it also helps the performance too. Like, I remember the director was like, you got to fill their pockets with the real things as well. And I was like, well, that added another, because he wasn't just saying like real duplicates, because there's people that make real Zippo lighters that are identical. He wanted wartime Zippos that cost hundreds of dollars each. I was like, wow, that's adding a lot of money for something you would never see. But we did it. And I will say, like, proved me wrong. Like, I remember Brad Pitt, I think it was Brad, gets a knife out, and it's a tanker's knife. So it's a very, very rare special thing. And he said in it, and he uses it cutting peeling a potato so it became a prop in the movie. I was like, wow, that really paid off. It gave the actor. And then in an interview later, Brad said, he asked about the movie. He said, I had this knife in my pocket, and I knew it belonged to a real soldier in the war, and I wanted to honor that guy. So I was like, wow, really? So it all was layered. You've got to go deep. And sometimes I'll even, knowing stuff like that, I'll even take the set dressing if I'm doing a street, sometimes a little bit off our street, because I know it'll inspire people when they walk into the set, and it'll help actors get into the and just make their performances better. And that is really what a set is all about. A set is a backdrop to the performances. So that, and you never try and steal the scene, because the scene is what carries the movie. So anyway.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear, it's stuff like that, like things or materials that are for the actors that infuses itself into the performance. And we see that. And then, everything is just like building layers upon layers. And, then you get this final product that we get to see. And it's almost like, wow, I just saw through a window to the past. And, it's things like that that really captivate people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got to be authentic. Like, don't. And this is a big part of design, is fighting the design, because most designers have a creative background, and we're always trying to make things look nice and pretty, and that works well. These colors work together, but the real world isn't like that. Fury in Point, we did I remember we did I was there for a couple of months before the crew turned up, doing location scouting, and we were looking at all these epic landscapes, very much like Saving Private Ryan, these beautiful vistas and everything. And then when the tank guys turned up and said, oh, it costs £10,000 per move, so we can't go to any of these locations. The director said, okay, see this farm we're in? All the movies in this farm. And I said, well, it's only in 100 acres. How about we do 2 farms? And so luckily he gave in, but I was brokenhearted as a designer, because now it was just like this beaten up farm outside London. And I was just like, but then we shot in hedges and hedgerow and woods. And I was like, well, that's the real war. They don't go looking for beautiful vistas. They hide in the hedgerows, and they hide in the woods. They're not looking to get shot at. And so then then I was like, so it stopped people looking at the beautiful vistas, and it made people look at the performances. And I realized that was a great thing. So anyway.
Right. Kind of a restriction that led to an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think a better product because of it,
So as an art director, you've worked in the sci-fi genre. I'm curious if you could tell us, what you've learned as an art director. Now, technically you have 2 sci-fi projects. One of them, mostly alien with a little bit of human, and the other mostly human with a little bit of alien. And now you said earlier, it has to be alien, but not alienating, which I loved, by the way.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, from working on those projects, how did you go about finding that balance?
Well, I was just the art director, so I wasn't. Rick Carter both was the production designer. The great thing about Rick, one of the many great things, is he always comes at things from a very cerebral, sort of theoretical way of approaching a movie, which was really educational for me. So with Avatar, he came at it like it's the yellow brick road. It's the story of the yellow brick road. This man on looking for his heart, looking for the Tin Man. It was it's a very epiphanal moment, and he comes at every single movie like that. Like, what is this movie? What's the message of the movie? He did that with What Lies Beneath, and I believe that took What Lies Beneath to the next level. It took a horror movie into this thinking man's horror movie. It was a very and Rick is brilliant to that, and that's really inspired me. But that'll filter down to his art directors, who he's very trusting. Like he's very much like, these are your sets, have at it. This is he lets you develop them and design them and he's the designer, but he lets you go as far as you can. So you learn a lot, and then he'll come in and go, no, yes, no. Yeah. More no's than yes at the beginning. But it's a real learn. You're like, oh wow, yeah. Why didn't I think? Because he's actually thinking not only the design. He's thinking, I remember doing War of the Worlds. There's the basement set which I did. There's water in the set. I mean, I hadn't even started laying it out for him yet, and he's like, what are we doing about the water in the set? I said, I don't know. He said, well, you should know. We've got to get crates so people can walk on the water, walk above the water, or we drain it and fill it, drain it. So I'm like, wow. So he's thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead, and that's a great learning experience too. Like, how does these sets work for the crew and for the shoot and the visuals, and so anyway, so as an art director, I think the process of art directing is the same for any project, really, because it's a management. It's taking a design from inspiration to completion, so that those are the same. It's really trying to get the grit and the texture to what the designer who's already downloaded that to you. That's really what you've got to get right, So anyway.
Right. The translation from the design to the execution, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, if we could, I'd like to talk about Borderlands. First, when did you get brought in, and what were some of the challenges that you found with this project?
I was brought in very late because there was an initial designer on the project who had a family issue that he needed to take care of, and so I got very short notice. But luckily, he had built an awesome art department in Budapest, so I literally could just step in. I was very nervous at first because it's very tricky stepping in, especially when it was a very strong and talented designer. So I was like, okay, these are big shoes to fill. But luckily, he had really put it in place. So when I turned up, very short notice. I mean, literally, I got a call and they said, "Can you be here tomorrow?" And I was like, "Can you just give me 3 days to pack, please?" So they luckily gave me a few days to pack and get ready and head out. But it was every single person was awesome on the movie. Like, they're not always like this. There's the director, Eli. I mean, typically the directors and producers set the crew tone, and they were all really good people. Like, Eli's a real sweetheart of a man, and the producers are the same. So it was easy to step into that because everyone's nurturing you and trying to help you get to your goals. So I came in a little behind the 8 ball, but everybody helped me get there. And the aesthetic, like I said, I remember when I got called for the job, while I was talking to my agent, I was looking at images online. I was going, okay. And he said, like, they want you to honor the look, and that's it. You don't have to come up with your own thing. It wasn't like Power Rangers where I had to reinvent the look, the whole aesthetic. I was like, oh, I see it right away. I said, I love it. It's fun. I could see it's cheeky, fun, humor, but there's a gritty, apocalyptic thing going to it. So I was like, okay, I get it right away. I know I can step in. I did. So I went out there, some great local art directors, and a great Juji and a great decorator, also Juji, who just were like champions and just had my back, and I made it look. I knew I was in good hands. There was a few little, like anywhere, there's a few areas that I was nervous about, but like vehicles and things. There was few things that I'm coming in with my own aesthetic as well. And so there was a few things I wanted to shift from the previous designer's look to what I felt was more appropriate. But either one was right. So it was just more my personal taste. So
we always like to ask, working professionals about the problem solving aspect of the job, because we'd like to get into that because there's a lot to be learned from going through that experience. So is there anything on Borderlands that came up, let's say in the art department, that became a challenge, and how did you deal with that, and what was the outcome?
That's interesting. I think it's a tough one because I think, like, if there's no job I don't think that's easy. I think if you it's like being in architectural school. Architectural students are famous for staying up all night. And the reason being is the more time you put in, the better the project's going to be. So you're going to put in all the time you have to get it the best you can be. And that's the same with making a movie. You've got to put your mind, like I I'll have many sleepless nights when I'm making a movie, and it can be even the simplest small movie. And I used to really bemoan those. I go, oh God, do I have to? Why am I so stressed? And then I'm like, no, but that's where your creativity, through adversity comes from. If you're not stressed, you're not. I know this is, and a lot of people disagree with me, I'm sure, but if you're not stressed, I don't think you're doing your job to your full level, because stress is what pushes you to your maximum level of productivity. And yes, you don't want to sustain that for a long time. And there's a lot of external stresses already from filmmaking, like we talked about earlier, weather and these things that can really disrupt your sleep. But when I'm in that creative process, like trying to come up with ideas that will make the project better, I'm having sleepless nights. And I used to be really not happy about it, but now I'm like, no, that's where you got to be there to be creative, to push yourself to the next level of getting a great idea that's better than, I get paid to deliver above, I hope I do anyway, above average work. So I want to be pushing myself to that next level of what can make this, like Crom's Canyon. When I came on, big third act. So it's very common in big movies. The third act is always like, no one knows what, because, Marvel and other things have sort of coined every big ending. So it's like, okay, how do we make ours better? How do we do this? So, that was a big worry for me, because there was no third act thought out when I came on. So I was just, okay, what is this? What is this? And I was like, okay, Crom's Canyon is mining. Okay, maybe this massive digger has dug this trench, and then all the people have dug little trenches off from the massive digging hole, and we see a little bit of iridium on the walls. And, so suddenly it started, oh, cool, you've got these holes where people can jump out of and creatures can come out of, and also the jeopardy of falling in these holes. And then suddenly it became a playground. But that was several sleepless nights coming up with, like, what is that, and with great guidance from the director as well. Like, I need these things, I need these elements, I need them to hide, jump out and come through, and maybe there's these holes, and and I think it started as reference from these pits that they have for dyeing in Morocco, for dyeing clothes, I think or India. And so it was like, oh, I get it. Okay, so, but how about ours are circles, and it's these holes that the diggers have dug. And, so it was all, those are the little sparks of inspiration you're looking for from research. And so Crom's Canyon was a one that was stressful. And then the vehicles were stressful, because when I came on, they were pretty much nearly finished. And I do a lot of vehicle movies. So I was like, oh, those are quite disappointing, but because they'd chosen the base of the vehicle was a vehicle that couldn't be modified. And I'd done like monster trucks and things where you have these, there's a certain base you have to use for those vehicles to get the power, the wheel sizes, the grunt, to do the scenes. And when I turned up, they were like these quite domestic pickup trucks that didn't have the power, didn't have the wheelbase. So I was those sort of things kept me up at night. So, but like I watched the trailer. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I go, okay, visual effects filled the hole and made them cool and made them fast, and when I watched the trailer from, as a side note, when I watched the trailer for Borderlands, you realize like how collaborative a movie like that is, like how much visual effects brings to the table, how much stunts brings to the table, how much obviously actors, as always. And it was just, you go, wow, there's so many layers from so many people. Like a normal movie like Fury, I've provided the main layer, which is the tank and the location and things. But on a movie like that, on Borderlands, there's just so many layers of so many talented people, like the first designer, my work, the art directors, the visual effects people, the storyboarder. You go, wow, that's one hell of a collaborative project. So.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the whole world of that movie, it really comes across. It's really impressive, and it must be so nice to have such talented people in every area, putting all their power into creating this final product, and it really does show.
Yeah, yeah. I see like filmmaking as like alchemy, and it takes one of those ingredients to ruin the making of the gold. Like it can be a little bad performance that maybe most people don't pick up on, but it's enough to spin them off, or they don't feel the energy between the actors, and it's literally just energy. It's not performance. It's a vibe. Or something's off with the sets, or something's off with the atmosphere. It's these little things. That's why literally filmmaking is alchemy, I think. And I look at the trailer for Borderlands. There's a lot of good ingredients that went in there from a lot of talented people. So anyway.
The look of the film does a really great job of writing this line of gritty dystopian sci-fi, but also has a bright, saturated color palette. And those two things create this really unique tone. Could you talk about how you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly the right word. It's tone. And when or when a designer comes on the movie, he's got to work out the tone, because like there's a very fine line, especially with something so dystopian as Borderlands. If you push it too far, then it could become depressing and horror movie-ish. So it's that line of adding, because the game has a lot of humor in it, but it's got a lot of scares in it too. So it's surfing that line, and the colors was a way to lift it out of that, completely post-apocalyptic type world, and lifting it out and giving it a little bit of fun to that, to the set. So yeah, color played a big part of that, as it does in the game, because there's obviously other games, plenty of games that are post-apocalyptic, but they've all chosen their own lane of like level of darkness. So it was really trying to identify that. And, I'm not the only steward of that. It's going to be Randy, the game creator. It's going to be Eli. We're all looking at making sure we surf that right line, and not making it too silly either, like keeping it more grounded and real, because there is jeopardy in the movie, and you don't want it just to be a slapstick thing. You want to. So the sets did play a big part in that, especially when they're in the underground tunnels. There are quite scary moments, because it's dark and with these monsters and creatures. So it's that fine line. But Eli's quite a fun-loving guy by nature, and I think that kept it from going to, like, if you had a really dark director, it could have gone really dark, bloody and guts and this and that. But I think he kept it very true to the game.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Eli's films, and I was really interested to see what he would do with a film like this, because it's something that he hasn't really tackled before, but he seemed to really take to it. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally think it's very original. I mean, obviously there's TV show Fallout's come out, but when we made that, it seemed like it was its own lane, because normally you do these movies and it's like, oh, do it like Aliens and with a little mix of this hot movie, and everyone uses film references because we go, oh, I get it. Like when I did Fury, hey, look at these war movies are the ones you want to look at, and that's our tone. But I think actually this was the first movie I've done where we didn't have. I felt like we were trailblazing a little, like there wasn't a movie we could refer to for the tone. So, and that's why I think Eli, it was a very brave move. Eli was quite brave stepping out and protecting the IP and the look, and he was, so I think it was, he didn't drag it into his world or, another director's world, like make it like Aliens, he kept his lane, and I thought that was took a lot of courage.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Now we have one last question for you, kind of a wrap-up question.
Right?
Advice. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back to the beginning?
That's a good question. The advice I would give myself is it was lots of advice, but the one I think I would say is trust the path. I'm by nature a mountain goat Capricorn, so I was always destined to climb the hill slowly and surely. And like I said, some people are eagles and they get to the top really quickly. But I knew the sure, safest path was up the side of the mountain, step by step, learning my craft, and just trust. Trust. If you build the foundation, you will. There might be dry spells, and you'll lose your confidence, and you'll think nobody loves me. But you just trust it will come. If you've done your time, you've done your homework, it will pay off. Like there's a path, and it's, it'll just come. And if it's not that path, then another one will find you. Like I said earlier when I started the interview, this production design found me. Like, I was working the outback of Australia. It found me, but the reason it found me is because I was putting out as many feelers as I could to see what doors would open, because I wasn't content where I was at that time. So I was like, okay, get in these film schools, apply for these things, apply for that, and then always walk through the door, because you can always walk back out or close it if it doesn't work out. If you don't walk through the door, and I've seen this, I've offered to people opportunity, and no, I'm going on holiday. And I'm like, okay, that door was closed. and then I'll get a call from them 5 years later. Hey, is there and I don't want to be mean, but I'm like, look, the door if I had the door open again, of course. But, that's what I'll say is, just don't not go through that door, is what I'll say.
Well, very well said. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and congratulations on Borderlands. It's such a great film.
Thank you. I can't wait to see it. You've seen it, I haven't, so I look forward to it.
Be sure to check out Borderlands in theaters to see Andrew's amazing work on display. And for more interviews or deep dives into the StudioBinder software, be sure to like and subscribe to be notified when new videos are added. I'm Brandon with StudioBinder Academy. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.